Okay, so hopefully you've gotten some writing done, some rewriting done. You've made enough progress so that it's time to cite your sources. Now, you might want to have that sheet, that cheat sheet that I gave you, handy while we talk through this. But the basic two sections of this little video are: one, some ideas about what to cite, and two, how to cite. Isn't that exciting? So first off, what to cite. This is gray area. I'm going to say that right out front. You are looking for a template and it doesn't exist. But if you are to have an overarching idea about what to cite, make sure to remember, avoid plagiarism. Avoid showing work. Oops, sorry, this is moving. Avoid showing work that is not your own as if it is your own. And that's either on purpose, which I honestly can't believe that any of you would do, or by mistake. So let's take a look at a student's paper from years ago, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. This opening paragraph has a judgment call right off the bat. The author says, since the United States was founded, citizens have not always been treated equally. That seems reasonable. You don't have to cite that. It's kind of bordering on opinion, but it's pretty well established. For example, slavery existed until the Civil War, and women did not have the right to vote until the 19th Amendment was passed in 1920. That's this line right here, if you're reading along at home. Both facts are pretty well established and understood in the United States, that it was the Civil War that ended slavery and the 19th Amendment that ended the inability for women to vote. So I'm feeling pretty good about this author's decision not to cite that information. Now on this line right here, the author notes as follows: Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment states that every citizen is equal under the law and requires that the government must treat all citizens equally. I'm backing this decision too. It is the student's first citation of the paper, because this is the first paragraph. And this is information that not everyone knows. Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. How many people on the street could say that? Granted, I know you can find a lot of people on the street who wouldn't know this either, but this is more specific. And the author got it from a very specific source. And so they used the parenthetical notation to tell the reader that there was something here that they're cited, and later we'll go over the detailed explanation of that citation. That'll happen in the sources cited list. I've moved further down the paper, and I like this cited source, and I'll explain why. The author talks about the University of Baki, first case to be brought before the Supreme Court concerning affirmative action policies at universities, shape plans for students attending the school. I'm interested anytime there's kind of a first, and that is something that that not everyone knows again. And so there's a source here that shows that the author was right and did some research to find out that this was the first case concerning affirmative action policies at universities. So it is the fifth citation of the paper with a parenthetical. Here's a line with a quote. They say, at the time, the school admission policy set aside exactly 16 spaces in the class reserved for, quote, special applicants. And the authors decided to cite this. This gives me 2 bits of information. They have this exactly 16 spaces. That seems such a bizarre number. It's not something anyone would know. And also there's this term, special applicants, which I think the author is going to discuss is a euphemism of sorts for students of color or minor underrepresented groups. And so I agree, it makes sense to cite this source. I've moved to another paper here, and I've chosen the section where they're walking through the court cases. When Brandenburg appealed to the Supreme Court of Ohio, the court dismissed his appeal for the reason that no substantial constitutional question exists herein, but did not explain its reasoning. That would surprise me, that a court would not explain its reasoning about no substantial constitutional question. And so I was pleased to see that the source was cited, and I could go and corroborate this fact. In other words, I could go back and see that in fact there was no explanation, at least not any formal one. So the biggest ticket items are as follows. You got this specific data. So when there are numbers that people don't know, when there are dates, when there is something quite specific, you might look at it and if appropriate, cite it. Then there's this second part that I'm trying to get to. Think of it as interesting information or questionable information, stuff that you think is going to be surprising to me, and I'm going to say, ooh, I got to check on that. I'm afraid that there are lots of judgment calls here. You just got to do your best. Use these as guiding principles, and then remember your overall gut check, which is that if there's a lot of work that is not your own, it probably needs to be cited, either in the paper, you're quoting someone and you say, Justice Brown said this, or with a cited source.